Imagine some guy comes to a show and says, "Hey, I really like that song of yours, and it's a song you have not played in ages, a pretty tough one, and you are not even sure how well the rest of the band knows it." And so, what do? You play that song exclusively for that guy, right on the spot without any prior rehearsal. And yet the guy you are risking public embarrassment for is actually the person you hate the most in the entire world. The story is real. The band is Megadeth, led by David Scott Mustaine, and Lars Ulrich, the owner, chewer, and what else? The drummer of Metallica is that hated guy. The Metallica-Megadeth feud has been a roller coaster for all these 4 decades that it's been going on. Well, it's not much of a feud when it's one side complaining 95% of the time. But you know the story. Mustaine was in Metallica, and one morning he was kicked out without any warning and second chance. And so he started his own band called Megadeth with the intent to dethrone Metallica. Spoiler alert, he didn't. And in this whole drama, one member of the fucking band has been the focal point of Dave's grudge. Lars.
I mean, I like James more than Lars. I think everybody does. He's not a good drummer. He really isn't.
Darren Lars goes, "That's fucking brilliant, man." And I went, "Oh my God."
Just like my friend.
What? You do your thing with Dave, I'll stay out of it.
But whenever they meet in real life, it doesn't really seem like something's up.
They still, they're like the brothers who they get along and they have to rib each other once in a while, but they still get along. They're still brothers,
At different point in time, whenever their paths crossed after being the bandmates, it did affect Megadeth in some way. For instance, in the late 90s, Lars allegedly said in an interview that Mustaine did not take much risk with his music. Dave had noted that since, so we have the album named Risk, which is often regarded the worst Megadeth album. GG, Lars. GG. But music is music, and Lars is someone who always appreciates good songs, something that Megadeth has plenty of. He stated numerous times that his favorite Megadeth album is Peace Sells, and he likes it so much he once even forgot its title.
Rust in Peace.
What?
Wait, what's the second?
Peace Sells?
album? Peace Sells. Okay, there you go. Some peace, and I listen to it a lot.
And Lars's favorite Megadeth song is the closing track on Peace Sells, My Last Words. And yeah, that's the song we're talking about here. My Last Words is a classic case of a fan-favorite deep cut. It doesn't get more recognition simply because it's on the same album as the song it shares the name with. But My Last Words was actually composed way earlier and was even played at Megadeth's debut show in February 1984 under the name Next Victim. And by the way, these 2.5 pixels you see are none other than Kerry King of Slayer, who was filling in while they searched for the second guitarist. And also the show featured songs that would later appear across various Megadeth albums, as far as So Far So Good, So What, plus a bit of Jump in the Fire, which exists only as a Metallica song. I wonder why Mustaine never recorded it like he did with Mechanics. Anyway, My Last Words was played heavily, and like twice the speed, on the Peace Sells tour and a bit in the early 90s. And then it was shelved for over a decade, until Megadeth performed it a couple times in 2005, with Mustaine being the only member from the lineup who had recorded the track. And so we go to the summer 2010, to the now iconic Big Four tour, where Mustaine shared the stage with Metallica for the first time in almost 3 decades.
Now that was a metal moment.
And with this vibe of reconciliation in the air, James and Lars show up to Megadeth's concert backstage.
James Lars came down, hung out, and walking to the stage, I think Lars
Casually asked if his favorite Megadeth song, My Last Words, was on the setlist. It was not. And some say he first asked for that during the Big Four tour, but Mustaine did not go for it then, I guess because it was a more high-stakes event in case something went wrong. But now, it's a normal Megadeth show for the Megadeth crowd. Screw it! Let's do it!
Lars asked me to play this song tonight, so...
If anything, blame
My little Danish friend.
And not only was it a shocker for the rest of the band, this lineup had never even touched this song. And now, all of a sudden, they're gonna perform it on the stage in front of thousands of people. And Metallica?
So on the way to the stage, I think we agreed we would play My Last Words. We hadn't practiced it in a long time, but it's like, fuck it, we're going to throw it in the set, you know?
And the tune, again, is not an easy walk. So, how badly did it go wrong? You can skip a few minutes to see it yourself, but I suppose some of you are not that familiar with My Last Words, and what makes it so cool and unique that even Lars admits it's genius. It's pretty much speed thrash metal, but the intro stands out, it's melodic, and is a masterpiece on its own. Man, that hand-breaking arpeggio. I've tried playing it once, never again. It's so tricky, it's even sloppy on the record. In the early version, the arpeggio is actually simpler. Mustaine seems to love making those overstretching licks. Then, under that clean riff, there's a bass solo of sorts. With lead guitar mirroring the bass line for the most part. Or probably it was the other way around, since Mustaine is the sole writer of My Last Words, no Ellefson name on it. Then the main riff is a classic Megadeth 7/5 open riff on the middle strings. Not overusing the lowest E string was a hallmark of 80s Mustaine, which is the exact opposite to Metallica's approach, who just could not help but do most stuff in the E. Meanwhile, Megadeth embraced higher keys and higher positions, and their heaviness comes from other means, such as the drums, and My Last Words is no exception, with the amazing Gar Samuelson behind the kit, may he rest in peace. And that bridge will forever stand as one of the coolest drum moments in metal. Speaking of vocals, yeah, that's classic Mustaine, but he does some melodic vocal line in here too.
6 to 1's the odds, we are the highest stakes, words again and again, but with my very life today.
And as you heard, one of the most badass metal screams ever.
Wow!
As for lead guitar, this is a rare case in Megadeth when the second guitarist, here it's Chris Poland, doesn't have much to do except some melodic stuff in the intro. All the shredding is on Mustaine. And to me, this is the second best Megadeth solo ever. And you do know who takes the top spot, that is My Last Words is the best Mustaine solo ever. Then the first riff is probably the easiest part of the song, just long power chords. And it's pretty unusual to see Mustaine singing over something that simple instead like the most complex riff imaginable, which is like his superpower that even he cannot explain. So this spaciousness of the guitars in the verses kind of balances the rest of the song, which is, tight and fast, and it also makes room for one of the coolest bass lines in metal. Most bass players would just follow the chord with 16th root notes. It does get the job done, and that's what Ellefson does in the other part of the song, like the main riff and the bridge. But in the verses, all the bass does is just this descending pentatonic lick. Out of context, it may seem like some bass exercise. It sounds a bit like broken record, but it does work. How it could not? Because it's pentatonic. This type of bass line appears in a few more Megadeth songs, such as another classic from PCL's Wake Up Dead. And Breakpoint. So all said about the bass, and also remember the intro. Even though Ellefson was not credited as a co-writer on My Last Words, his touch brought the song together. And yeah, the song is about a guy who is playing a game that could be last in his life, and so the lyrics are like his last words, And so even the misheard opening line still makes sense. And so how did Mustaine and company do with playing My Last Words with no preparation and no second just all to please Lars Ulrich? Unfortunately, I could not find the professional recording of it from the desk. All we have is crowd footage. But even with that, we can say they freaking nailed it. Except for a few bits where they had to improvise a little, like Dave faking his way through half solo. But you would not really notice because it still sounded like pretty much like Megadeth. And also in the bridge, in the drum part, where Sean had to ease up a bit just to make sure everything stayed on track. The person who was probably shocked the most to discover they're gonna play My Last Words was the other guitarist, Chris Broderick, who had never done the song with the band before. Even Sean had performed it like a couple times back in 2005. That was already like 5 years, so it was basically starting from scratch for both of them. Luckily for Chris, there's no big solo for him in this one. But knowing what an amazing and precise guitarist he is, I'm sure he would have faked it just fine. And who had it the easiest? That'd be Dave Ellefson, the bassist, not just because his basses and their mistakes are least noticeable, but again, half the song is just that pentatonic run, and only the intro could have been a bit rusty for him, but he pulled it off perfectly. And remember, that's without preparation. Almost because the song was the last song, no pun intended, on that show. And so I believe the boys had at least a couple minutes before the encore to go to the structure quickly, to the trickiest moments. Still not much time and no proper rehearsal, which only proved how professional they are. And you can actually spot Dave Mustaine trying to remember that tough arpeggio in the intro, the very second Picel sends and while talking to the crowd, not wasting any second to make sure it will go as smooth as possible. And so given the circumstances, that was an amazing performance and a cool piece of metal lore, accidentally induced by the drummer of Metallica. And honestly, I'm not sure if Metallica could have pulled off the same. Alright, what would have been Metallica's equivalent to My Last Words? That is, a fairly complex track from the 80s that they don't play often. Like, say, The Eye of the Beholder. Imagine if Mustaine showed up backstage to Metallica around the time they were getting along again and said, "I really love Eye of the Beholder, would you play it tonight?" It might have gone something like this. So if you like this video, push that like, that's the minimum how you can support this channel. And also if you have a spare buck, you can donate on Patreon or become the member of this channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time, friend.